NASCAR goes international. A driver from New Zealand wins the inaugural Cup Series race in Mexico City. If only Mr. Worldwide still had an ownership stake in the team. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Bienvenidos out of the Groove, Ciudad de Mexico. NASCAR racing at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, the Cup Series for the first time ever. Wet and wild at the beginning. The middle portion of this race was a dogfight, a full-on physical brawl. Tension spilled over onto pit road post-race. We'll talk about that. But at the end, it was Shane van Gisbergen, New Zealand driver, road course specialist, Australian Supercars champion, won in his Cup Series debut on the streets of Chicago, masterclass in the final stint. But before we cover all that and so much more, this was a historic event for NASCAR. First international Cup Series race in nearly 30 years. First international points race in the modern era. Huge week for Daniel Suarez, the lone Mexican-born driver in the NASCAR Cup Series field, a former Xfinity Series champion. Been in Mexico City all week doing additional media, additional appearances, interacting, engaging with fans. Ran the Xfinity Series race yesterday, and it wasn't always smooth. Crashed the primary car, but drove from last to first to win the Mexico City Xfinity race in front of his home country crowd. Smashed the piñata in the stadium section. A beautiful moment, all leading up to today, a historic day for the NASCAR Cup Series. The NASCAR industry willing to step outside of its comfort zone, try to break into a new market, show the rest of the world that NASCAR has evolved. I think for years there was a stigma around stock car racing. It's old, it's antiquated, it's outdated. NASCAR saying, no, we are here, we are modern, we are pushing forward. That's important when you're relying on $1 million corporate sponsorship. And then I see images like this pre-race. Todd Gilliland, hounded by Mexican fans, needing a ring of security guards to keep him safe, to keep him moving. That's Todd Gilliland. All due respect, looking like a superstar. Dude could walk through the crowd at Martinsville and get no attention. But here, these fans, and sure, I don't know how many of them know who Todd Gilliland is. Maybe they're all autograph hounds. I don't care. The optics here, that makes NASCAR, that makes Todd Gilliland look like a superstar. You don't get that image at 90% of American NASCAR tracks. The Mexican fans, from what I could see, sitting at home, watching on TV all weekend, were into it, were excited, were very knowledgeable, if not about NASCAR, specifically about racing. And I did see, as the weekend went on, it felt like more and more fans I would see in the background or at the track had NASCAR merch on, a lot of modern, current driver t-shirts and hats, some throwback merch. So I think NASCAR successfully made a splash in a new market. I mean, Mexico City is the largest city, I believe, in North America. Obviously, you wish the weather would have cooperated a bit better. NASCAR has terrible luck with the weather anytime they try something new. Chicago street race, last year of the Clash, now this. But by and large, I see images like this. I see tweets from fans who are getting to see their favorite drivers in person for the first time ever. This was awesome. There are 37 Cup Series races in the United States every single year. And NASCAR has brought back some old familiar fan favorites like North Wilkesboro, like Bowman Gray, like Rockingham for the Xfinity and Truck Series. It's awesome that every now and then NASCAR is able to break up their usual routine and do something special, do something unique, reach out to a different demographic, different fans than they typically tailor to. I don't know if NASCAR's metrics will determine that Mexico City was a success this year. Maybe they won't come back next season. Maybe Montreal will get this date on the calendar. Time will tell. But the vast majority of content I saw on TV and on social media this week showed a very positive NASCAR Mexico experience. I thought the quality of racing Saturday and Sunday was great. The drivers looked like rock stars. The home country kid got his moment in the spotlight. This was fun, and it feels sustainable. Unlike the Chicago street race, which reportedly costs upwards of $50 million a year just to put on, unlike the LA Memorial Coliseum, which forced NASCAR to come in every single year and cover the USC football turf with a quarter-mile asphalt racetrack, like that kind of undertaking year after year after year, likely not sustainable. You hear about diminishing returns. Yeah. Mexico City, Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, a purpose-built road course facility. Again, I don't know if NASCAR will come back, but I think the infrastructure is there. I think today was proof enough of the concept that this can be a sustainable, regular stop on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. I hope those who attended had a good time. The purse for this weekend's race was a little higher than most other Cup Series race weekends this season. I had a good time watching it. But now, let's get into what actually happened during the race. And we'll start with the race winner, because the final 20, 30, 40 laps of this race was all Shane Van Gisbergen. I'd argue no driver, besides maybe Daniel Suarez, racing in front of his home fans, his home country after all, was under more pressure coming into today than SVG. While Shane has somewhat adapted to oval racing the past couple of years, he's still not a great oval racer. Road courses are his area of expertise, and Mexico City, a brand new addition to the Cup Series schedule, most of the field had never turned a lap here. Advantage SVG. Sonoma's coming up. Watkins Glen later this summer. Those are road courses that this whole field has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of laps on. SVG's advantage is a bit slimmer there. So Mexico City was probably Shane Van Gisbergen's best opportunity to win and lock himself into the 16 driver playoffs. Qualifying for the playoffs is worth millions in bonus charter money, payouts at the end of the year. It's a huge, huge deal. And with NASCAR's current win and you're in playoff format, a guy like Shane Van Gisbergen, a road course ringer, if you will, brings a ton of value to his race team. But he has to win. And it had been a little while since SVG won a road course race. Shane Van Gisbergen, coming into today, had led laps in 6 of his first 7 road course cup starts, but only the one win, all the way at the beginning, Chicago. And remember, last fall, he was outdueled at Watkins Glen by Chris Buescher. This spring at COTA, he was outdueled by Kyle Busch most of the day. Christopher Bell won the race. So while I think just about everyone agreed Shane Van Gisbergen was the favorite coming into this weekend, that by no means guaranteed he was going to win, especially with weather in the forecast, so many variables, strategy, weird cautions coming out at weird times. A lot could have gone wrong, but thankfully for Shane Van Gisbergen, in stage 3, everything went right. He wins this race by 16.5 seconds. A friend of the channel, Steven Stumpf, writer for Front Stretch, noted on X that this is the largest margin of victory since Texas more than a decade ago. That was a fuel mileage race. You have to go back to the 90s to find a larger margin of victory. Shane Van Gisbergen stomped him the final 30 laps of this race. He was cruising, as we said on the radio at least, saving his stuff, and by the end of the run, he was putting lap times down that were over a second faster than everyone else in the field, just toying with them at the end. There was great racing in the middle of the pack, beating and banging, guys pushing each other around. We'll talk about that in a moment, but up front, it was clean and green at the end for SVG, a deserving winner, superstar stuff. I'm sure there will be debate in the comment section over the validity of the playoff format, especially the win and you're in part of the playoff format. You know where I stand. I have not been a fan of win and you're in ever, especially with no stipulations like this. Like if they said, okay, win and you're in, but you got to be top 25 in points, okay, maybe I could get behind that. But just win and you're in, 33rd, 35th. I mean, SVG's 33rd in points. Like, I'm not a fan of that. Y'all know that, but I don't make the rules. Trackhouse knows the rules. They gave Shane Van Gisbergen a full-time contract because they knew this was the likely outcome. As long as winning you're in is a thing, Shane Van Gisbergen brings immense value to Team Trackhouse. I mean, NASCAR's talked about changing the playoff format somewhat for next year. If winning you're in stays, SVG just bought himself a long-term contract extension, in my opinion. I bring that up only because there's been a lot of talk about Trackhouse. They have 4 drivers and only 3 Cup Series spots for next year. Ross Chastain is a lock, I think, to stay with the team. Won the Coca-Cola 600 a few weeks back. I think this win secures Shane Van Gisbergen's job for at least another year. We'll talk about Daniel Suarez in a moment. Okay, I don't want to bring down the mood. This was a very special weekend for Daniel Suarez, but yeah, to wrap things up on Shane Van Gisbergen, he looked like a superstar at the end of this race. This is his style of racing, and he put on a clinic. I know fans will say the finish of this race was boring, and it was pretty boring up front, honestly. But sometimes it's okay for the superior driver to put on a superior performance. That's how superstars are born. I know a lot of fans want to see side-by-side photo finishes every week. Well, if you're going to have that, you're also going to have a lot of weeks with surprising kind of fluky winners. And that's not great, in my opinion, for the legitimacy of the sport, and that's not great for building superstars. Shane Van Gisbergen looked like a superstar today. It wasn't always exciting, but at least we can sit back and appreciate that the clearly most talented race car driver won the race. I mean, that's how sports should be. The best should win 99% of the time. If that's not happening regularly, then your sport has a problem, I would argue. Anyway, congratulations to Shane Van Gisbergen. He is in the playoffs. Let's pivot to Daniel Suarez. And I'm not going to bring down the mood. Yes, I think Shane Van Gisbergen winning this race and Daniel Suarez finishing 19th, isn't great news for Daniel's Trackhouse future. Suarez is still 28th in the regular season points, but I'm not going to dwell on that today. I've talked about that this past week. We'll talk about that going forward. This was a very special weekend for Daniel Suarez, and him winning the Xfinity Series race yesterday, the images that came from that, the emotion behind that moment was incredible. And I want to give Daniel Suarez a round of applause for handling the pressure of being the face of the sport. This weekend, Daniel Suarez was the name, the face of American motorsports in his home country. You thought that crowd around Todd Gilliland was huge? Daniel Suarez dealt with triple, quadruple that just about everywhere he went this weekend, and he handled it all with grace, as far as I could tell, winning the Xfinity Series race after the disappointment in qualifying. Incredible resilience. Wish he had finished better today in the Cup Series race, but he was in the mix, in the top 10, earned a couple stage points, I believe. Wish the Cup race had gone better, but still, I want to at least give Daniel Suarez the credit he deserves for handling this monumental weekend with such grace. But with that being said, let's take a look at the top finishers here. I think second place just crossed the start finish line. Christopher Bell, spring winner at Circuit of the Americas, really good road course racer. I mean, he got didn't his first career Cup win come at the Daytona road course? He won that Charlotte Roval playoff race a couple years ago in the clutch. He's a good road course racer. We think of him as a dirt guy, ripping the high line at Homestead, but Christopher Bell has some really good road course numbers, really solid once again today. Keep in mind, he qualified like 31st. No track position, still finishes second. Well done, Christopher Bell. Chase Elliott was charging towards the front in the final run. I think he restarted like 12th or so with 31 laps to go. He was behind Ty Gibbs, who felt like maybe was the only guy all day who could kind of compete with Shane Van Gisbergen. Elliott got by Gibbs and then just kept climbing his way forward, passing his way up through the top 10, even though they were all roughly on equal tires. Ty Gibbs, Austin Cindric, guys who were really fast today, got trapped back in 10th, 11th, 12th, 15th, could not move forward. Chase Elliott could. Elliott has 7 road course wins on his resume, but they all came in the Gen 6 era between 2018 to 2021, hasn't won a road course race since, but he was top 5 at COTA, top 5 again today. A lot of speed from Chase. He's just not quite as good as Shane Van Gisbergen. Who's this SVG guy? Why did he have to show up and start stealing all the road course spotlight? Still an impressive performance for Chase Elliott and a very impressive performance for Alex Bowman. I was hard on Alex Bowman this week because, frankly, the performance has not been good the past couple months. He's struggled lately. The whole team has, to be fair. Crew chief Blake Harris, I don't think has lived quite up to the expectations we put on him when he first came over to Hendrick. Pit crews made some mistakes. I've talked about Texas. That put them in the middle of the hornet's nest. They got caught up in a wreck, but Alex Bowman deserves blame too. He's wrecked that car 3 or 4 times in the past 2 months. We talked about it before today. 7 finishes of 27th or worse the past 9 weeks. Before today, dropped from 3rd to 13th in the regular season points. Alex Bowman, coming off a vicious impact at Michigan, not at 100%, showed tremendous grit and determination today to finish 4th. Really impressed with Alex Bowman. Another guy, not quite to Bell's level, but a sneaky good road course racer. We talk all the time about his top 10 streak at the Charlotte Roval. He's always been really good at Circuit of the Americas for whatever reason. 4th place run here today. Really impressed with Alex Bowman considering what he went through 1 week ago. And then 5th for Michael McDowell, who we talked to on the show earlier this last week. Qualified 5th, finished 5th. Really good road course racer. I know he had this race circled as one he thought he could win. Nobody, unfortunately, was in Shane Van Gisbergen's zip code most of the second half of this race, but a good result for Michael McDowell, who's trying to make his way into that playoff picture. We'll look at that in a bit. Another solid day for Legacy Motor Club. John Hunter Nemechek, 6th. Not quite on this graphic, but 17th was Eric Jones. That car was beat up, looked like a tank. He was running everyone. They were running into him, but Eric Jones gets a decent finish. Great result for John Hunter Nemechek. We've talked about resilience. How about Chase Briscoe in 7th? Poor qualifying effort for once, 19th. Then he got swept up in that Kyle Busch, Justin Haley, AJ Allmendinger disaster, lost all his track position once again. Then at one point I look up and he nails the tire barrier, but these cars, again, what did I say? Built like tanks. Keeps going, gets himself a top 10 finish. Good result for Chase Briscoe, another solid road course racer. A lot of decent road course racers now that I look at it. A lot of these young drivers, they've had more road courses on the schedule as they've come up through the ranks. They've gotten more experience, more reps. Some really good young road racers in the mix here. Cole Custer, man, shout out to Haas. Most of that team had to travel commercial through Atlanta late Thursday, early Friday morning. They get themselves a top 10 finish. That is huge. William Byron, Chris Buescher, couple of good road racers, top 10 finishes as well. You can see the rest of the top 15 right there. Some other notables. Ty Gibbs ran a really good race today, but like I mentioned earlier, he was 11th on that restart with 31 to go, and I don't know if he burned his stuff up trying to pass Ross Chastain or what, but suddenly the speed in that car was gone. Maybe it was the dirty air, maybe it was the traffic, I don't know, but he faltered and finished 11th. AJ Allmendinger, 13th. He was also caught up, like I said, in that Kyle Busch wreck, had to battle back. It's a shame that we never really got to see what AJ Allmendinger had today. That he came back to finish 13th with certainly at least some right rear damage is impressive. I think he could have perhaps contended with Gibbs with SVG if he hadn't been swept up in that early crash. Ryan Preece, solid job recovering from that pit road penalty. Preece won a stage today. That's big considering he entered this race right on the playoff cut line. That's 10 stage points plus a playoff point should he qualify for the postseason. Ryan Blaney, you see, finished just ahead of him. Blaney earned the most stage points today. Road course strategy, a lot of times you flip the stages. You have to choose either your stage points or track position. Blaney chose stage points and earned the most today. So solid points day for Blaney, all things considered. There were a few ugly moments in this race, notably when Kyle Busch slipped in the wet conditions, collided with Justin Haley. AJ Allmendinger destroyed the front axle on Kyle Larson's car. I mentioned the disappointment about not really seeing what Allmendinger had. I'm disappointed that Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson didn't make it to the dry. It was wet, it was raining early on in this race, rough conditions, and guys were tiptoeing out there, but Kyle Busch tried to get a little too much, drove in a little too deep, and it cost him, cost a few other contenders. Just sucks. We kind of saw this at Chicago last summer. Remember, it was wet at the start of that race as well, and like Chase Briscoe overdrove a corner and took Shane Van Gisbergen out. Remember that? That was such a bummer because obviously you knew in that race SVG was going to contend for the win. Briscoe may have as well. And today, considering how fast he was at COTA and how fast Kyle Larson is pretty much everywhere, you feel like the Kyles could have had a shot at the win today, or at least top 5 finishes, but we never got to see it because Kyle Busch just, what he does now, just doesn't really seem to have a feel for the situation and pushed a little too hard too soon and wiped out. That's tough. One driver who we've talked a lot about lately and praised quite a bit recently is Carson Hocevar. Hocevar had a horrible afternoon at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Muy horrible, you might say. Every time I looked up from my notes, the 77 was getting spun out or spinning himself out or getting into somebody. In my notes, I counted at least 3 notable incidents he was a part of. The last one was probably the worst. Gets into the stadium section a bit too hot and spins himself out, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Look, I know Carson's young. I know he wasn't trying to spin Ricky Stenhouse Jr. out there, but they're racing for like 20-something. And Hocevar's already had a horrible day, involved in multiple incidents. At that point, the one thing you can't do when you're having a horrible race, you're not in contention, is piss off the guy you already pissed off 3 weeks ago. Ricky Stenhouse, after the race, gets out of the car, charges over to Stenhouse, and yells through his driver window that he's going to whoop him, used different language, when they get back to the States.
I'm going to beat your ass. You're a lap down. You got nothing to do. Why are you running right into me?
Yeah, I mean, is Ricky Stenhouse going to physically confront 6'5" Carson Hocevar? I'm not sure. But, Yeah, Stenhouse has the green light. Like, Stenhouse should spin Hocevar out in the coming weeks. Maybe not Pocono. That can be a little sketchy, a little dangerous. But one of these upcoming races, first chance he gets, Ricky Stenhouse should spin Carson Hocevar out. He should, because that's how you self-police. If he doesn't, he's not self-policing, and Hocevar is not learning his lesson. What goes around comes around. You can race aggressive like Carson, but if you keep messing somebody's day up, they have the right to get you back, and they should. Eye for an eye. That's how NASCAR incidents are policed, because NASCAR themselves will rarely step in and officiate aggressive driving. So Carson has one coming. I like Carson. It's been super fun to watch him over the past few weeks. So much speed, so much potential. He's been in the mix. Awesome. But Ricky owes him one. He just does. That's how this works. One more moment we got to talk about, and I've been hard on this guy in the past as well, but I'm actually going to compliment Riley Herbst for a moment. Riley Herbst, rookie for 23XI Racing, qualified pretty good and raced inside the top 15 for most of the day, and he earned a couple stage points, I believe. He was racing inside the top 15 in the second half of this race, looking like a really solid performance for the rookie when he got turned by William Byron. Got spun out just before the stadium section. That sucks. But as sucky as that moment was, Riley was this close to making it so much worse when he pulled out into oncoming traffic. Ricky Stenhouse had to take evasive action. Whoa, I'm cringing even watching it in replay form. I'm going to need to see the driver and the spotter at the hauler post-race. That is insane. I don't know what Riley was doing there. That was a really, really bad decision. Somebody I saw on Twitter actually shared a clip of Riley Herbst a couple of years ago doing kind of the same thing in the Xfinity series. So he's a repeat offender now. Needs to have better awareness when he's facing the wrong direction on the racetrack. I'll make this excuse for him, maybe. I don't know if the spotters have a great view of that section of track right before they get into the stadium. So I'm not sure. I could be wrong. Maybe his spotter was telling him what to do, but I'm not sure he had a spotter with a great visual telling him when to blend back onto the track. That's the only kind of excuse I can give him. But either way, somebody needs to talk to him. I don't know if this is where 15 years ago, Mike Helton would have met with you after the race, chewed you out, told you not to do that again. I don't know if Mike Helton still has that authority, but someone needs to be the Mike Helton in this incident and tell this rookie driver, you can't pull up into traffic like that. That was almost really, really bad. But again, I want to compliment Riley Herbst, was running a really, really, really good race before that moment when he just lost his brain for a second, it seems. Quick look at the playoff bubble now with 10 regular season races to go. Pocono next week, still a couple of super speedway races, 3 more road courses in the coming weeks. We all expected at least one surprise winner to move the cut line. Ryan Preece, despite scoring a top 15, despite earning a bunch of stage points, actually lost ground to the cut line today. That's how difficult it is to race when you're on the bubble. That's why so many of these drivers talk not about points racing, but about winning. Win, and all your problems go away. What did Michael McDowell say on this show earlier this week? A win is worth 2,000 points because you're in the playoffs. That's how a lot of these guys look at it, and I get it. Alex Bowman had a top 5 day, huge day. He's in the same points position he was coming into the race because SVG won and leapfrogged everybody. Everyone knows the format at this point. Everyone knows what it takes to get in. I think realistically, the cut line is actually up there kind of where Bowman is. Like, if you ask me, knowing how many road courses and super speedways are still left to go, I think Briscoe and Bowman right now are vying for the last spot on points. Like, I would not be shocked if an Allmendinger, a Hocevar, a McDowell win one of these upcoming regular season races. I mean, Kyle Busch is a 2-time champion. I mean, never count Kyle Busch. Ryan Preece has had speed. I mean, there are a lot of drivers who could pop any weekend and nab one of these spots. So if you're Bowman, if you're Briscoe, you're not feeling great today. But there you go. Quick look at the playoff bubble. 10 races to go. Oh, playoff bubble just turned into the Groovy Gauge. What was this race called? The Viva Mexico 250? Something like that? Love the name. Love the name. This race was all over the damn place. I mean, it felt like I watched 3 different races today, like I said in the beginning. First off, kind of a rain, wet weather experiment. Hard to tell what was going on. Everyone was on different strategies. Austin Cindric held onto those slick tires longer than I thought was humanly possible. Then that middle stint was aggressive. Rock'em sock'em, track dried out, gained a lot of speed. You started to see the Gibbs, the SVGs, the best drivers bubble to the front. And then that final stage, for the most part, was just a whooping. It was just Shane Van Gisbergen showing us why he is so damn good. So it was like 3 very different races, all entertaining and also somewhat frustrating in their own rights. Overall, I thought this was a good race. I'm always happy when one of the most deserving drivers gets the trophy at the end. I love a surprise from time to time, but more often than not, like I said, the best drivers should be rewarded with the victory on that day. I'm going to give this race a 75. 75%. It was a very good race. Not an all-timer, but we've seen some snoozers in the next-gen era at road course races. This was not that. The last 20 laps, maybe, up front, kind of a snoozer, but there was always great battles mid-pack, guys getting angry at each other, rubbing each other, running themselves off the racetrack. Very fun, very physical road course race today in Mexico City. I'll go 75%. Let me know if you agree, disagree down in the comment section below. I imagine scores will be all over the place, again, because there were 3 or 4 different identities to this one event. Final thoughts. I just saw a quote from Ben Kennedy. It says that they hope to be back in Mexico City next year. I'd love to see him run it back for another season. Again, this feels like a much more sustainable annual event than the street course at Chicago or the Coliseum. Like, I love the street race. If they don't keep it in Chicago, I'd love to see it go to another American market. I think it's awesome, a great event, but doing the same track in the same city on 4th of July weekend year after year, that becomes difficult over time. I feel like Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, purpose-built road course race. These fans are used to coming here for F1, for other world-class motorsports events. I could see NASCAR finding a place for this facility on its schedule most, if not every year. Like, this feels sustainable. And again, I know some fans are going to say, bring it back to Richmond or wherever this date used to be. But no, I would rather see this over a second Richmond race every time. No disrespect to Richmond. Love me a good Southern short track race, especially under the lights, but we got one of those already. Like, I'd rather that and this than 2 of those. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, maybe that's just me. Maybe you disagree. There are 38 Cup weekends a year. 37 of them are in the United States. Many now are back at traditional Southern short track venues. I think stepping outside your comfort zone for a race in Mexico City, maybe Montreal, Canada next year. Love to see it. Love to see NASCAR step out of its conventional bubble, show the world that it's fresh, that it's evolving, that it's modern with the times. That's what matters to corporate sponsorship. That's what matters to OEMs. And clearly, it mattered to a lot of race fans down in Mexico City this weekend. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more NASCAR commentary and content every single day, every single week, all year long. Really and truly appreciate your support. And a happy Father's Day. Almost forgot to mention it. To all the dads out there, especially to my dad, who's probably out there watching this. Happy Father's Day to you. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Take care, y'all.